Hello, everybody, man. I got a lady on the channel. I'm so excited that she decided to come on because I called her a few times. I emailed her. I sent text messages, and she responded and she said, "I'm excited to be on your channel." And she said, "I got some history I got to tell these people. Don't get it confused. I know what she handled the trail. She do the trail. And how about this, folks? Y'all know who I am. I'm Anthony Brogdon. I'm the guy that I just find the people. I be thinking to myself, hey, what's a good story? I come up with one, then I go and I look for somebody to interview, and sometimes I get lucky enough and find the person. Today, I got lucky enough to find the right person. This is what she do, is tell this history. All right? So, you know what I want you to do, my friends? I want you to hit the subscribe button on the channel. It's free. All you got to do is hit the button, take your cursor, right? You know, that little arrow thing, and go down to subscribe and hit that. It don't ask for no information or anything. Then what I want you to do is like this video, because she going to blow your mind. Some of y'all been to where she talking about. I've been there once and had a grand old time. And I'm actually coming back soon because I had a grand old time. Then I want you to hit the notifications bell so when the new videos come up, and I'm doing 4 or 5 of them a week, you get a little ding or something like that to let you know there's a new video on strong inspirations. And then, my friends, this is easy. Tell somebody about strong inspirations. Don't keep this to yourself. Let this flow. This is good history. All right? Do that for me. And then what you know I really want you to do also, this is my personal tip here, my friend. This is how I kind of survive and eat and live and all that, is I got this movie out. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. All the good things that happened for Black folks in the business arena, going back to slavery. I know y'all didn't know slaves owned businesses. There were some of them that were very wealthy at it too, and then used the money to buy their freedom. There's all kind of stories that go on in this history. It ain't just cut and dry. And she's gonna tell you one, watch out. So I want you to watch my movie. It's only 75 minutes long. You're not gonna go to sleep because you're gonna be sitting there with your mouth open, drooling at what I'm telling you in that film. Watch out. I'm telling you, I promise you that. And then what I want you to do is also, I got this book out, Black Business Book. It go with the movie, but it's got more facts and it's very, very thorough. Covers some of everything in this book. And it's really an easy read because I just give you the fact. I don't try to add no commentary because I ain't trying to put my own interpretation on nothing. I let the fact stand on its own, and then I numbered the fact. All right? So that you can be talking to your friend who also got a copy of the book and say, hey, man, you got to read fact number 27. I didn't know that. And they can go right to it. Fact number 39, 59, 89, 99, 109, 149, whatever fact you want that really hit your heart, it's in this book. And the book and the movie are both available on Amazon. But, you know, my man Amazon ain't got tons of money. If you want to cut the big Amazon hand out, just go to my website, businessintheblack.net. All right? I say all right because here we about to roll. She's sitting there. She patiently waiting. She's smiling. She's nodding her head. She got a good backdrop behind her. This is what we do on this channel. We find these people. So, okay, introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself. Thank you.
My name is Elaine Corley Weintraub, and I am an Irish woman. And so people would wonder why an Irish woman was so interested in Black history. So I'll tell you a story about that.
Okay.
That when I came to America, the first place I'd visited New York City a few times because my husband's family were from there, but I'd never worked anywhere until we came to Martha's Vineyard. And that was the first time I lived in America. And I think that it was kind of the way it happened was the way it was supposed to happen, because I got this job, and as an outsider, I could see things that I'd like to say that, maybe now after 20 years, I wouldn't notice because that's the way it was set up. But I'm a teacher, I'm an educator.
Okay, I got to stop you right there, though. I don't mean no disrespect, but I got to go back there just a little bit. Is there Black history in Ireland?
There is actually. Frederick Douglass visited Ireland, and
Really?
right now, as we're talking, he was campaigning against enslavement, as he was when he visited many places. And they're building a trail in Ireland, Frederick Douglass's journeys. So,
Really? Oh, that's beautiful. Well,
yes,
okay, and so the trail would probably signify where he got off the ship and walked through Ireland. What do you think that
yeah.
trail could be?
And he made some real interesting comments because the Irish themselves were colonized, and they were. Um, he talked about the conditions he saw there, and he said it reminded him of the slave cabins that he had known in the South. And he was close with the person in Ireland we call the liberator, Daniel O'Connell, who they both, their view was human beings should be treated with respect.
Okay, hold on. Okay, we're gonna get to the story, but you got me thinking here. What do you mean they were colonized? The people in Ireland were taken over by another European country?
England.
Huh. So
Uh,
were the people in Ireland, were they captured in some regards and used as indentured servants?
in
Really?
historical terms, that did happen. Sent to the Barbados, and in the 1600s when they discovered, coffee and sugar, and they wanted indentured labor. But it was more a question of being pushed off their own land in Ireland, and laws passed to limit what they could do and what they couldn't do. So it was definitely colonization till the Irish War of Independence, which isn't until 1922.
So when they came over, did they come and shoot and kill Ireland people to take over the land, or it was just
Yeah,
how did that process happen, man?
well, it happened by a series of invasions, and it was really invasions from 1100 onwards. But each time they take a bit more, and then it gets more brutal when it gets to the 1600s, because by that time they're colonizing the Caribbean, they're moving towards Africa and India. Um, so they've become better at it. So the for instance, indigenous Irish people are Catholic, generally speaking.
Okay.
But there were laws called the penal laws that you couldn't own a horse worth more than £5. You couldn't live within a certain part of the town. Um, you couldn't inherit property, and you couldn't leave property, because it's always about money, isn't it? It's always about
Yes.
oppression.
Yes.
And so where's the financial gain? And it parallels very much with what was happening here with Native Americans.
Yes, I see. Didn't know that. That is there uh do they teach this history in Ireland, or do they try to
They
hush
do.
hush it?
No, they do. It's taken time, because you still have people saying, even people who know it's true, saying, well, that was then, and we're all going to get along now, and let's not dwell on that.
Yeah.
And you know how that can be. It's sort of, are
Yeah.
you dwelling on it, or are you just telling the truth?
What now when you say that they took them as indentured servants, what in America, because of slavery, we can tell you're African American, your skin, your hair. How could they say who was Irish? Could an Irish guy say, hey, hold on, man, I ain't Irish. I'm one of you all. Don't leave me alone.
It's,
You know what I mean? Hey, I
I
like what you're
do,
doing.
I
How did they
do know
distinguish who's who?
exactly. I know exactly what you mean, and it is a great question. And people have asked me that before. And I know how did I always know my whole life who was who? it's something that gets very, even yesterday I was having this conversation with somebody that there were people who went along to get along, but they didn't get very far. But I mean, they weren't about to be revolutionaries, but you just knew. And the way things worked out when I was growing up, you just knew who had what,
Yeah.
who lived where.
Yeah.
It was, it's subtle, isn't it? But you
Yeah. I
just
got
know.
you. I got you.
And,
I got you.
how do I know? Somebody said to me, well, why would you even think about that? And I said, well,
Yeah, I got you. Well,
I've,
one more question on that because you hit a nerve, and I like what you said. Did that happen in your family? Did you think one of your great grandfathers was captured and put into indentured servitude?
they could have been, but we wouldn't have enough records to know that. Um, you can find records when it comes to like there's a famous one, a letter from the son of the British dictator who was a really brutal invasion of Ireland, where he's just selling some girls to plantation owners in Barbados. It's just simple business, and he's writing this
Hmm.
letter. I think he says he has 30 of them and he'll send them and they're fine. And let me know when you need some more.
Wow.
And it's kind of,
Wow, that's deep.
isn't it? You
Didn't know
think
that.
about it and
Yeah. And this led into you said something earlier. We're gonna get back to the story about Martha's Vineyard, but you said something earlier. There was a guy there in Ireland who was known as the Liberator. He's
yes,
like the Martin Luther King, let's say. Is that kind of
yes,
you would
yeah.
compare? What's his name? And is
Daniel O'Connell. And he was a good friend of Frederick Douglass, who traveled with him. He himself, as a young man, had left Ireland and gone to France. It was um, a better environment for him. And he was in France when the French Revolution happened. And he was a big believer in liberty and equality and fraternity, but he wasn't a believer in violence. So there's another parallel with Dr. King. He felt that his thing was monster meetings. He would call these meetings and get thousands of people to go to them to protest about, first of all, they wanted emancipation as Catholics, to have civil rights, they wanted some land so they could live. Um, but he never supported violence. And it's after him, he died just as the famine in Ireland was starting. And of course, quarter of the population died in that famine, and attitudes got more, you know what I'm saying? Like
yeah.
after the famine, some people were like, well, you can stick nonviolence. We're going to fight. We can't be worse off than we are now.
So how did they get their freedom? How did they get away from the Europeans
Um,
at the end?
they originally rebelled against England during the middle of the First World War.
So
They'd
you're
been
talking about the 19.
1914,
Yeah. Okay.
1918. The
Okay.
first rebellion was 1916. And there wasn't that much support for it. It was like just that group of people. Are they some kind of, they're going up against the British Empire, the most powerful country on earth, with a few guns that they got somewhere? And there wasn't that much sympathy. But then they were all executed. And that turned the
Mm.
mood.
Oh, I
And
see.
after that, there was a guerrilla war against British power. And I think they eventually just got ungovernable. They couldn't. So,
I see. I see. Good. Let me ask you this: do you notice how did Black people get to Martha's Vineyard?
well, that is a great question. In fact, I was just at a meeting today. I wasn't sure if I was going to get back in time, but I did. We were talking about the Shearer Cottage, at the Shearer Cottage, which is the oldest African American owned inn on Martha's Vineyard, still owned by the same family in the fifth generation. And there's stories that make sense, but you have to apply a little bit of a bigger picture. there were areas you could be. So was the vineyard a bad place? It was kind of amazing that people could buy property 5 generations ago. But there was an understanding where you could be and what you could do and where you could buy those houses. Um, it's still a remarkable achievement, but there's a lot of fake stories that Black people came to Martha's Vineyard. One story that various tour companies put out, they kind of make it up as they're going along. They were all escaped slaves, because there's stories. We just got 2 of our sites recognized by the National Underground Railroad Network to Freedom. Those 2 rescues happened on Martha's Vineyard. But to suggest that all African American people came there, I think what I've seen from the research I'm doing right now is there's an awful lot of dismissal of Black enterprise and Black commercial instincts. So you could live a certain part of the island, but you could open a boarding house. You could have your place featured in the Green Book. And so you could build, the community built that way. And the whaling trade, which had happened in the previous century, brought people from all over the world. I've read lots of the crew lists. They literally came from everywhere.
Okay.
And a lot of them from Cape Verde in Africa, which was on the whaling route. And those whaling voyages took 4 years. So maybe by the time you got to Martha's Vineyard, you'd kind of had it. Whaling ship.
Yeah, sure.
You say, oh, this looks good. And so I think the answer is that they came there in many different ways.
Right.
But certainly enslavement existed here. We've documented
really?
it, we've got it, we know it. But as I'm sure you've encountered before, there's resistance to that idea. It's like, well, that was then, and
yeah, sure.
or it never happened here, or it wasn't me.
Now, what happened? Now, you said the sheriff's house, the hotel. When did the first guy buy it? When did it open up? Do you know?
Charles Shearer bought the house in 1895, the original house. And then they applied eventually. What they did, they operated a laundry, because that's the story that I've found, numerous examples of it. Families came and they had to make it work. And, the vineyard is still a bit like that you come for the summer, you work, the season, you can make some money. Shearer's ran a laundry for many years until Henrietta Shearer died. And her daughters said, well, people stay here anyway. Why don't we open it as an inn? And it's been an inn since 1912. It was a center of a community, really. Most of the houses around there would have been African American families. It's a success story, but it is an enclave. When you go there, you would say, yes, this is the Highlands, and this is where the African Americans lived, right by the Baptist Temple.
I got you. Now, is that in and I don't know if you call them cities. Is that in Oaks Bluff or?
That's in Oak Bluffs.
Yeah. And Oaks Bluff was where most of the Black people did live.
I think in the 20th century, yes. I think it became the place to go. I mean, most people, when they're thinking of where they can go, they tend to go where there's some other people that look like them.
Sure.
So I would think that was one reason why Oak Bluffs. It was also associated with religious revival.
Okay.
The Baptist Temple, which was destroyed in the 1940s, would have attracted, like Charles Shearer was an elder of the Baptist Church, and people would go there for the summer. But there's some interesting stories. For instance, here in Oak Bluffs, there's the Camp Meeting Association, the famous gingerbread houses. When
Okay.
people see a picture of Oak Bluffs, they see those colorful houses.
Sure.
Um, the whole time I've been here, that was known as a place that was unwelcoming to African Americans. You had to have the recommendation of a member of the managing board to get a place there, so you didn't get one.
Okay.
And I've seen the questionnaire that they gave, and they didn't want Jews, whereas Catholics, they didn't want anybody.
I got you.
And they had their forms that you had to fill out, and then you had to get them countersigned, and nobody was going to
Yeah,
countersign
yeah.
them,
That, that.
so
Let
they
me ask you this: what is the Inkwell? Wasn't that the beach where the black people could go?
the beach. It's a beach. The thing about the Camp Meeting Association is that it turns out now that African American people were there. They were probably Methodists. It was a Methodist campground, and they lived on the periphery, on the outer, but all those houses were removed. And the houses were removed and put somewhere else. And I assume the people went with the houses. Now, the Inkwell is a beach. It's a very popular beach, and there's many stories about why it's called the Inkwell.
Yeah.
Um, I'll tell you both of them, and I'll let the two popular ones, and I'll let you decide.
Sure. Sure. Sure.
Um, one, that there were so many writers and talented people living around that area that people called it the Inkwell because an inkwell and pen that you.
Yes. Okay. I like that one. That's a good story.
Yeah, that's a good one. The other one is that that was the beach where you had to go if you were African American,
Right.
the last beach before the jetty. Um, I'll let you decide which way that went.
Yeah. Yeah,
I,
that's okay. But was it the worst beach? Was it more rocky or something like that? Did they kind of say,
I
okay,
would
we'll let
say
you add
no.
that one over there, but you got to step over them rocks to get to the water?
I would say no.
Oh, okay.
But the jetty has big rocks, so it actually is cut off from the rest of the town beach, which all runs down. Ironically, it's a very popular beach, and that's
Yeah.
where the famous polar bears do their
Yeah.
mornings.
I heard of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, so I guess you can spend your time looking for institutional slights, and there were many.
Yeah.
Or you can talk about people who built community. I mean, the polar bears are there every morning.
Yes. I love it. Did
And
did did, did African Americans come to the island um, to live? More, what was the percentage that came to live and the percentage that used it as a resort town?
I would say year round, the African American population was small. The Portuguese Cape Verdean population would have been bigger, the Native American population, and now the Brazilian population, probably all bigger. But in the summertime, there are people, because they've owned those houses for generations, they can keep coming. And there's a whole culture to Oak Bluffs in the summer that it, some people would
Yeah,
say,
I
oh, well,
love
it's
it.
all, it's very, you're very conscious that you're in a diverse, celebratory atmosphere. You know, it's a holiday place.
Right.
I would have to say that Oak Bluffs is pretty much like that off season.
Yeah, I
It's the
got you.
most diverse of the towns. You don't have a feeling that you have to be one thing or another thing.
I got you. Is there a older African American church on Oaks Bluff? I think you said Baptist. Is that church still operating? Is there a church there?
No, it was research said, everyone told me when I was researching that, oh, it was destroyed in a fire, it burned down. But it didn't, because when I researched if it was torn down and like a park created there, and they said, oh, it wasn't in good condition. You can't always know what's in the hearts of people. You can only say what happened.
Yeah, right, right.
As a historian, you can't say, well, they did this because.
Yeah, right,
But
right.
it's gone. The last African American church was torn down about 3 years ago. And that was a really sad thing. the Heritage Trail, we kept petitioning and writing letters and
Man,
protesting, but
man.
it was sold. And it was really just an old house that needed fixing. The church was still there when you walked into one room, was set up
Yeah, yeah.
exactly. You could have started the service then. Um, there's only one black church now, which doesn't have its own building. It cooperates and shares building with the
Yes.
Brazilian church.
I got you.
Brazilian people have a lot of churches.
Is there the oldest building that is still operating and African American centered is that share they're in?
I would say, yeah, the Shearer Cottage. There are, we're hoping to put a monument on this campground where those houses were,
Okay, I love it.
to say, hey, they were here. They were part of this. And what I'm hoping to do, I don't know if I'll be able to be successful, is get the names of those people.
Okay,
And
I
on
love it.
the plaque, it would say they were here and this
Yes,
was their names.
I
Um,
love it.
so that would have been older.
Yes.
And the irony is, Edgartown has a very old African American history.
Oh, really?
And in the 20th century, Edgartown was a place where African Americans would not have chosen to go. And there were many of the boarding houses in Oak Bluffs provided living accommodation for people who worked in Edgartown but couldn't stay there.
I got you.
But Edgartown has got this history which we're uncovering. We're dedicating a site to Esther, the woman who escaped from enslavement. She was being returned to the South, escaped in Edgartown Harbor in 1743. That's a long time ago.
Sure.
And we figure she's waited long enough. We're going to have a big thing for her in July. She waited since 1743, but they never caught her again.
That's
And
beautiful.
Edgartown, of course, had the Wampanoag tribe on Chappaquiddick Island in Edgartown Harbor, and that was probably the people who helped her. But Edgartown, we found Frederick Douglass spoke there. We have a plaque for him. And Nancy Michael, who was born into enslavement on Martha's Vineyard, she was frightening the sailors, selling good fortunes when they were about to go on the boats, and if they didn't buy them,
Okay.
they'd be sorry.
Okay.
And we honored her. We have a plaque for her. So, we're talking the 1800s, early 1800s.
I got you. And those are some of the things that are on your heritage trail,
That's
correct?
right. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Are there other things on the heritage trail that you talk about that we haven't mentioned?
Um, yeah, I guess so. There's altogether we have 32 sites now.
Okay.
We're going to dedicate 33 in July. That's the one for Esther, the woman who escaped. But 32 was at a school, the charter school here on the island, created a monument for all those who were enslaved here, who lost their names. We don't know what their African names would have been. We
Sure,
know they
sure.
were Nancy and
Yeah, sure. Sure.
Rebecca, but those. So we created what was called the Nameless Trail there. We have a site to people who went south during the civil rights movement.
Okay.
We have a lot of, in Oak Bluffs alone, we have 13 sites. So what we try to do, we haven't got unlimited funds. We finance it through doing the tours and selling our books. So we try and not make it a who's who,
Sure.
but
Right.
but record individual achievements. Shearer Cottage was the beginning. It was our first site, but we also have Dorothy West, the writer, Adam Clayton Powell, leader of the Democratic majority in the
Sure.
Kennedy and Johnson administration, Senator Edward Brooke, the Overton House where Dr. Martin Luther King stayed. So it's what we're trying to do is
I love
present
it.
a whole complex story by showing the different achievements, the different challenges.
I love it. I love
So,
it. Now, How uh here's a crazy question. Man, the island is just so big. I live on that side of the island. You gonna tell me I can't come on that side of the island and I can walk there? That
Um,
isn't that kind of crazy?
well, it isn't it always?
Yeah. I
Yeah,
mean, I got 4 blocks on my side of the street that I can only participate in.
and usually I think it depends kind of how um, blatant things would be.
Okay.
I think in New England it would be a lot more polite.
Yeah, yeah. I
Um,
got you.
you
I
know what
got you.
I'm saying?
I
But
got you.
there were places that you couldn't go and that you would know you couldn't go. Um,
Okay, I got you.
and that was just understood. So
Yeah, I got you.
I
I
thought
got
it
you.
was
What was there ever an incident on the island, a racial incident that someone got killed or mob or lynched even?
no lynching, though there are rumors and stories, but there were some. If you look in the old newspapers of the 60s, 50s, 60s, more the 60s, because of course you've got the backdrop there of the civil rights movement and
Sure.
people challenging what was just always accepted before, um, of fights between groups of youths actually from Edgartown with groups of visiting African American young men visiting in Oak Bluffs. But overall, I'd have to say that there's been, particularly in Oak Bluffs, you grow up, there's a good chance that you're going to know somebody
Yeah.
and you have something in common with them. Maybe you went to school with them,
Yeah,
maybe
yeah.
you all go to the basketball courts, but you know them.
Yes.
And that is something you do see, even generationally, even in older generations.
Yes.
You know, island communities can be insular, but like,
Yes.
well, I know him.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I'm not complaining about, I'm not saying anything about, I know what this is, but I know him, he's
Yes.
all right.
Yes.
And they do actually know them because they sat next
Yes, I'm
to them in
sure. I'm
school
sure.
and,
Yeah. Um, is there a question that I have not asked you? Some, a point. And I know you said you wrote a book. There's a book that you all sell.
yes, they're
You have a
African.
copy of the book nearby? You can show it to us.
Um,
Okay.
and this book is in its third edition because we keep adding sites and we keep more and more developments like this, looking at African American property ownership, and um, is a new project over the last year,
Okay.
working with the University of New Orleans. And we're hoping that there can be some recognition of, because that is something that you find to be an empty space when it comes to African American entrepreneurship.
Sure.
There's plenty of it.
Yeah, sure. Is there an African American lady or guy who uh, is known to be an activist or vocal over the years back in the day that spoke for equality on the island or something like that?
Well, Adam Clayton Powell had quite
Okay,
a reputation here because I never had the pleasure of meeting him, but I
sure.
knew his first wife who lived till she was 99. And she said that he did quite a bit on the island of like, she said the thing about Adam that they would think he was white
Okay,
and they would say stuff and he would go home and organize a boycott. But we've had some last year, the NACP and the Heritage Trail petitioned the town government in Oak Bluffs to remove a plaque on a statue of a Confederate soldier, which is right down at the not Edgartown, sorry, Oak Bluffs Harbor.
mm,
And as a history person, that was my first recollection of the vineyard. I thought, what's that doing there? Why is there a statue of a
Yes.
Confederate soldier? It made no sense.
Right.
Massachusetts was the most
Right.
active against the Confederacy. But research showed that it was put up in the 1920s when they were putting those statues all over the country.
Right.
It was a definite nationwide
Right.
policy.
Right. Right.
And there was a plaque on this statue that said, honoring the gallant soldiers of the Confederacy, or words.
Wow.
And we petitioned taking it, and it got quite acrimonious. Some people were like, it's always been there. That's how we. Somebody said to me, but you have to understand, that's our heritage. And I said, well, you have to learn your history because you weren't in the Confederacy in this.
Yeah, right. Not just that. That wasn't a good story.
No.
Yeah,
And
you on the side of line.
so, but
My
you're
God.
just going on the idea. You always looked at it. Doesn't
Yeah.
mean it was right. Anyway, we did win. They did take the plaque off
Oh,
and
beautiful.
put it in the museum. The statue stayed there, but the plaque
Yeah,
was gone.
that's beautiful. Well, hey, I thank you so very much for coming on Strong Inspirations and sharing both stories, not just of the Martha's Vineyard, but also of the history of what happened in Ireland. My viewers, this is what I do. I don't even know where the story gonna go sometimes, and I didn't know she was gonna tell that. I didn't know she was Irish or anything, and that was a beautiful input. I don't know, input, beautiful something to say in relative to that. And so we know that, injustices happen all over the world, and there were oppressors all over the world oppressing all kinds of people for whatever reason, financial gain, mostly. What's the website for your organization?
MV African American Heritage Trail.org.
Man, I love it.
And we can be reached there, and we're on Facebook,
Yes,
African American Heritage Trail. We put
yes,
photographs of all our sites, and
yes, I love it.
we have a nice website. Can book a tour. So when you
Yes.
come to Martha's
Okay. We're gonna
Vineyard,
put
we
all
can
that in
book
the
a tour,
description, right?
and
Yeah,
we'll
let's
take
go
you.
down there to Martha's Vineyard. And I thank you. How long you been doing the trail? How long you been doing it?
The first site was in 1998.
Wow, for a long time.
For a long time, and we had
Yeah,
no money, so it was like, if we can get 4 sites, we can
yeah,
force this history on people, because we'll put
yes,
it on these plaques, and even if they just start walking the dog, they're going to see this and they're going to learn
yes, I love
something.
it.
We didn't realize how successful we would be.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah, we
so
attribute that to you. Thank you so very much for coming on the channel. Everybody hit the subscribe button on on Strong Inspirations. Hit the like button on this video, because she gave you something on top of something else that you did not know. Hit the notifications bell. Tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Don't keep this to yourself, trying to act like you know everything. And all you did was sit there and watch it for however many minutes. Share it with somebody. To you, I say, I thank you so very much for coming on the channel. And with all sincerity, I say, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind. We love what you're doing in educating people about the history of the island, not just Black history, but history in general, and keeping that word alive, and keeping just that good vibe, keeping things on a level playing field. And so we really appreciate you. Everybody get a copy of that book. Go down to the island, take her tour. We're going to say that with all sincerity. I'm on my way. Bye-bye. We out. Bye-bye.
bye bye. Thank you.
Yeah.